It was late Sunday evening when Laura came back from her business trip to Chicago. A trip she had mentioned casually 2 weeks earlier, just dropping it in over coffee like it was part of the usual routine. Just a couple days, she'd said. Corporate retreat, networking, you know the drill. I nodded. Tried not to read into the way she didn't ask if I wanted to come along. Normally, she'd offer. But this time it was already decided. Hotel booked. Flights confirmed. Bags packed 2 days early. That should have been the first flag, if I'm being honest with myself. But I wasn't looking for flags then. I was trying to be the supportive boyfriend, the guy who didn't make things harder. She walked through the front door around 10:30 p.m., wheeling her usual gray suitcase behind her. She looked tired, but not in the long meetings and fluorescent lights kind of way. She looked satisfied, like whatever she'd been doing out there had left her with this calm energy I hadn't seen in her for weeks. "Hey babe," she said, dropping her keys in the bowl near the door, just like always. "Hey," I said, forcing a smile. "How was the trip?" "Oh, busy. Boring. Networking until I wanted to melt into the carpet." She laughed lightly, that small, practiced laugh. But her eyes didn't match it. They flicked past me toward the kitchen, like she wanted to move on. Fast. I stepped forward to hug her, just like I always do when she gets back from a trip. And that's when I smelled it. Cologne. Not mine. And not subtle. It was heavy, some designer brand with a peppery kind of tone, something bold and way too strong to have just brushed up against her in passing. It was clinging to the shoulder of her jacket, the same one she always draped over the back of a hotel chair when she sat down. And right then, in that stupid, split-second pause, everything inside me jolted awake. "What is that?" I asked before I could stop myself. She pulled back. "What?" "That smell. You don't wear cologne." She blinked. Just once. Then her whole face shifted into defense mode. Faster than I thought possible. "Mark, are you serious right now?" she said, setting her bag down a little too hard. "I literally just got home. You're already accusing me of something?" I didn't accuse her. I hadn't even said the word. But apparently, just noticing was enough to trigger the performance. "No one's accusing you. I just noticed." "You always notice," she snapped, cutting me off. "Lately it's like nothing I do is good enough. You've been picking fights over everything. I can't even go on a work trip without being interrogated the second I walk in the door?" I stared at her, stunned. Not because she was mad, but because she was prepared. This wasn't surprise. This was strategy. She had an entire defense loaded and ready before I even finished my sentence. "Laura, I'm not interrogating you," I said slowly. "I asked a question. You smell like someone else's cologne. And because I was around people, Mark. In a city. At a conference. In packed elevators. What do you think, that I was having some kind of affair in broad daylight?" That hit like a slap. And the fact that she was the one to say it, before I even brought it up, made something twist in my chest. I took a breath. I didn't want to escalate. But the part of me that used to automatically trust her, that part had already gone quiet. She grabbed her suitcase and started toward the stairs. "I'm exhausted," she said. "If you're just going to keep throwing passive-aggressive accusations at me all night, I'm not doing this." "You didn't answer the question." She stopped mid-step, didn't turn around, just stood there with her back to me. And then, without turning, she said, "You're being paranoid." That word. It hung in the air between us like a trap, because that's what it was. A word designed to make me feel like the unstable one, like I was inventing things out of thin air. But I wasn't. I could still smell the evidence. It was in the room with us. It was on her. I didn't follow her upstairs. I stood in the foyer, just staring at the spot where she'd been standing, trying to convince myself that maybe there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe I was being dramatic. Maybe she had just been near someone who wore way too much cologne. But the moment I reached down to move her suitcase out of the way, that illusion cracked wide open. She hadn't zipped it all the way. The side pouch was slightly open, just enough for a flash of color to peek through. I crouched down and pulled it open fully. And there it was, a wristband. Neon blue, like something from a club or a concert, stamped with a brand I recognized from one of the loudest clubs in the city. Not a corporate lounge. Not a business dinner spot. A place built for music, dancing, and getting close to strangers. I turned it over in my hand. It was still stiff, hadn't even been worn long enough to lose its snap. That's when I realized. She hadn't thrown it away. She hadn't even thought to hide it. She didn't care if I found it. Or maybe she didn't think I'd look. Maybe she thought I trusted her too much to even ask questions. That stung worse than anything else. I stood there for a long time just holding it, trying to make sense of it all, telling myself not to jump to conclusions. But the more I replayed the past few weeks in my head, the more I realized this wasn't just about a smell or a wristband. This was the surface crack in a wall that had been buckling for months. I walked into the kitchen, still holding the wristband. Thought about confronting her, asking again, pushing. But I already knew how that would go. She'd double down, flip the script, turn me into the jealous boyfriend, the insecure one, the guy who can't handle his girl being independent. I set the wristband on the counter and stared at it. She hadn't lied outright. Not yet. But she hadn't told the truth either. And that, right there, the cologne, the club bracelet, the preloaded guilt trip, that was the moment everything changed. She hadn't been gone for more than 3 days. But something about her was already different. Colder. Confident in the wrong way. And the second I pointed it out, she didn't explain. She attacked. As if preparing for war. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't show up all at once. It trickles in through cracks you didn't even realize were there, until suddenly you're standing in a flood, wondering how you missed the warnings. After that night, I couldn't sleep. Laura had gone to bed without another word. Like her storm had passed and the damage didn't need cleaning up. I sat alone in the kitchen with a beer I didn't want. The wristband still sitting on the counter between us like a guest no one had invited. And that's when my brain started doing what it always does when something feels wrong, rewinding. Connecting dots that hadn't seemed important before. First, it was little things. A couple months back, she started hitting the gym more often. Nothing unusual. She'd always been active. But it shifted. Suddenly, she was doing late-night workouts she never used to enjoy, and always at a gym across town. Nowhere near her office or our place. I remember asking why she didn't just use the one nearby, and she brushed it off with, "This one has better machines." That felt reasonable at the time. Now, it felt like an excuse carved out of habit. Then there was her calendar. She used to be obsessed with planning things together. Every dinner, movie night, even grocery runs went in our shared calendar app. But for the last few months, big chunks had been blank, or worse, marked busy. No details. No explanation. I asked once, jokingly, what all the mystery meetings were. She just smiled and said, "It's not all for you to see, babe." At the time, I thought she was just being playful, protective of her space. Now I saw it for what it was, insulation. She'd also started showering the second she got home. Not sometimes, every time. Like clockwork. Walk through the door, kick off her shoes, and head straight for the bathroom. No hugs. No, "How was your day?" Just the sound of running water and a locked door. And her phone, that was the biggest shift of all. Laura used to scroll TikTok with the volume up, send me memes during the day, play music while she cooked. Her phone was always out, always buzzing. But lately, it was on Do Not Disturb constantly. Face down on the table. She'd jump a little whenever it lit up. If I so much as glanced at the screen, she'd angle it away, casually but deliberately. I remember one night, maybe 3 weeks before the trip, we were watching a show on the couch and she got a text. Just a buzz. No sound, no preview. She looked at it and smiled. A small, crooked smile. She didn't reply, just locked the screen and tucked the phone under the blanket. I asked, "Who's that?" She shrugged. "Work thing. Boring." I believed her. I wanted to believe her. Now I hated myself for how easily I'd swallowed it. I kept mentally rewinding. The way she used to overshare, the kind of person who would read me entire email threads just to vent, had suddenly turned into one-word answers. "How was work?" "Fine." "What did you guys do at happy hour?" "Nothing special." Sometimes she wouldn't even answer, just nod or shrug and change the subject. And stupid me? I took it as stress. I figured she was tired, overwhelmed, maybe even burnt out. But in hindsight, it wasn't fatigue. It was distance. A carefully constructed wall she started building brick by brick, and I never thought to ask why. Even our arguments had changed. They used to be about real things, division of chores, plans with her family, the kind of normal friction every couple goes through. But lately, the fights felt fake, manufactured. She'd pick at something small, like me forgetting to pick up oat milk, and spiral it into a character assassination. You don't listen. You don't care. You're always distracted. Like she was looking for justification. Like she needed a reason to feel like the villain. And when I tried to ask what was wrong, when I offered to go to therapy or change routines or do literally anything to meet her halfway, she'd roll her eyes, tell me I was being dramatic, that not every rough patch is a crisis. But this wasn't a rough patch. It was a pattern. I remembered a night when we were supposed to have dinner with her sister and brother-in-law. Half an hour before we were supposed to leave, she told me she had a migraine. She said she was just going to rest. I went alone, showed up embarrassed and fumbling for an excuse she should have given herself. Her sister didn't seem surprised. She's been flaking a lot lately, she said over drinks. Everything okay between you two? I lied. Yeah, just work stuff. She's been swamped. I was the one covering for her. Another time I tried to plan a weekend trip, a quick getaway, just us like we used to do a few times a year. I brought it up over dinner, excited to show her the cabin I found. She barely looked at the screen. That weekend won't work, she said. I asked why. She said there was a team offsite, but I realized later she never put it on the calendar. I never saw any emails or logistics or packing. When the weekend came, she left with just a purse and an overnight bag. No laptop, no charger. Nothing about it said work trip. I didn't say anything at the time, but now, replaying the memory with fresh eyes, I saw it for what it was. She wasn't going to a retreat. She was retreating from me. And there were other things, smaller details that felt meaningless until now. The new underwear she bought on sale. The perfume I hadn't smelled on her in months suddenly returning when she was headed just to the office. How she started locking the bathroom door even when I was nowhere near it. The shift in her music taste. The way she always seemed slightly buzzed when she got home, even if she claimed she'd only had one drink. None of it proved anything on its own. But together, it was like stepping back from a blurry image and suddenly seeing the full picture. I wasn't imagining things. This wasn't paranoia. This was the moment of clarity. Laura hadn't just come back from a trip. She'd come back from wherever she really was, and I was finally seeing the web she'd spent months weaving around me. I always thought that if I ever caught someone cheating, it would be this dramatic, world-shattering moment. Screaming, broken plates, confessions. But when it finally happened, when the truth crossed that invisible line from suspicion to proof, it didn't explode. It settled, like dust after a storm. The strange part is, I wasn't even looking for more evidence that night. I was just out with a couple of coworkers after a long week. I needed a break from thinking, from feeling. We ended up at a downtown spot. Loud music, too much lighting, overpriced drinks. The kind of place I hadn't been to in years. Not since before Laura and I got serious. It wasn't until I was halfway through my second drink that something weird happened. I was at the bar, chatting with one of the guys from the office about football, when a familiar sound cut through the noise, her laugh. Laura's laugh. Soft, breathy, rising at the end. I turned my head out of instinct, not expectation. And there she was, center of the dance floor, back turned to me, her hair up in a way I'd never seen before, loose, casual, like she hadn't spent hours perfecting it like she used to. But I'd know that silhouette anywhere. I didn't even have time to second-guess myself before she turned slightly, revealing just enough of her profile to remove all doubt. It was her, my girlfriend, dancing with another man. And not just dancing, close. His hand was low on her back, dangerously close to her hip. Her head was tilted slightly toward him, lips close to his ear, like they were sharing something private in the middle of a crowd. Her smile was real. Not forced, not polite, but effortless. Familiar, but not for me. I froze. Not out of fear. Not even out of anger. Just stunned. I hadn't expected this moment to feel so still. The music was pulsing. The lights were flashing. People were moving all around me. But it felt like everything stopped. Like I'd gone underwater. There was no explanation for what I was seeing. No context that could make this okay. She was dancing like she belonged to him. Like I had never existed. She wasn't drunk either. You can tell when someone's sloppy. This was different. Controlled. Intentional. The way she moved with him. It wasn't spur of the moment. It was practiced. Like this wasn't the first time. I didn't even realize I was still holding my drink until it slipped slightly in my hand. The ice clinked against the glass, snapping me out of the trance. And just like that, the moment turned cold. I didn't confront her. Didn't call her name or storm the dance floor or cause a scene like every part of me was screaming to do. I just watched. I watched long enough to see her place a hand lightly on his chest. Long enough to see her phone. My phone plan. Light up in her back pocket with a call from me, which she ignored without even flinching. She didn't even check to see who it was. She just pressed a button, shoved it back in her pocket, and went right back to smiling. I'd never felt so invisible. And that was the moment I knew. There'd be no salvaging this. No couples counseling or long talks or bargaining. This wasn't a mistake she was scared about. This was a decision she'd made, repeatedly, comfortably, and I was just the ghost standing in the crowd. So I left. Not in a rage. Not in tears. Not because I couldn't handle it, but because I could. That was the moment I realized I didn't need to see any more. I didn't need her explanation. I didn't need to be lied to again. Everything she refused to admit was now visibly obvious. In her movements, in her smile, in how naturally she gave herself to someone who wasn't me. I pushed through the crowd, out into the cold air. The contrast hit me immediately. The noise of the club behind me, the quiet streets in front. The space between who I thought she was and who she'd become. It's weird how fast you can go from loving someone to being done with them. Not out of bitterness. Not even out of revenge. Just done. Like a light switch flipped. 1 second I was hers. The next, I was already somewhere else in my head. Somewhere she didn't follow. I didn't go home right away. I drove around for a bit, no destination, windows down even though it was freezing. I needed the cold. I needed to feel something sharp after weeks of numbness. At one red light, I checked my phone. She'd texted. "Hey babe, sorry, super loud here. At dinner with the team. Call you later?" I stared at it for a full minute. Then I just locked the screen and placed the phone face down on the passenger seat. Dinner with the team. At 11:30. In a club. With her body pressed against some guys like they were made for each other. She didn't even know I'd seen her. And that somehow made it worse, not the act itself, but the comfort she felt while doing it. The assumption that she was untouchable. That I'd never notice, or maybe that I'd never care enough to look. She thought she was clever. But what she didn't know is that I wasn't the same guy I used to be. Not anymore. By the time I pulled into the driveway, I'd already decided there would be no confrontation. No screaming matches or begged for second chances. That version of me, the one who'd stay, who'd reason, who'd hope for change, died on that dance floor. And she never even saw me leave. You'd think after seeing something like that, your girlfriend, your partner of years, dancing with another man like you never existed, there would be yelling, a confrontation, some kind of dramatic eruption. But there wasn't. At least not from me. Instead, I went quiet. Detached. I'd never felt so calm in my life. That probably sounds strange, but once you finally see the truth, when the fog lifts and all the pieces fall into place, the emotion shuts off. What's left isn't rage. It's clarity. Cold, surgical clarity. By the time I parked the car in our driveway that night, I knew what I had to do. There was no point asking her anything else. I wasn't going to beg for answers or try to get her to confess. I didn't need her to confirm what I already knew. She'd lie. Or cry. Or deflect. That was her pattern. Mine was about to change. The first thing I did was back up all our shared cloud data. You'd be surprised how much people leave lying around when they think no one's looking. photos, calendar entries, travel reservations, app data. I logged into our shared account and downloaded everything. Then I started flagging what didn't fit. There was a recurring hotel in the city, same one she'd stayed at for work multiple times. Not part of her company's approved lodging list. I checked the name against her emails. Nothing. She hadn't booked it through work. There were Lyft receipts to addresses I didn't recognize. One of them showed a 2 a.m. drop-off 3 weekends ago, the night she told me she was crashing at her friend Riley's place because girls' night turned into girls' therapy. The address? It wasn't Riley's. I knew Riley's apartment by heart. I mapped the address. It was a condo building. Downtown. Expensive. Not the kind of place you accidentally end up. I didn't say anything that next morning. She came downstairs around 9 a.m. wearing one of her oversized sweaters, yawning like she'd just returned from a meditation retreat instead of a lie. "Didn't hear you come to bed last night," she said casually, pouring herself coffee. I told her I was up late watching a movie and crashed in the spare room. She nodded, didn't press. Of course she didn't. She was used to me not asking questions. But I was done playing that role. That day, I started separating our finances. Quietly, methodically. Our accounts were joint, but I'd kept a private savings account from before we moved in together. Something I'd opened in college and never closed. There wasn't a ton in it, but it was enough to serve as a landing pad. I rerouted my direct deposit from work. Stopped auto transfers into our shared savings. Canceled subscriptions tied to my card. Within 48 hours, the structure of our life together had started to shift, and she didn't even notice. That week, I combed through everything. Credit card statements, calendar invites, Uber histories. I wasn't looking for more heartbreak. I was building a case. Not for her. For me. I wanted to see the pattern laid out in black and white. And the pattern was clear. Every major lie was supported by infrastructure. A changed calendar entry. A rideshare to an unfamiliar address. A team dinner that corresponded with no outgoing work email. This wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a second life. And she was confident I'd never notice. So I gave her exactly what she expected. I played dumb. For days I went through the motions: work, dinner, errands. I asked how her day went. I nodded in the right places. I smiled when she made dumb jokes over dinner. She probably thought we were doing better. That I'd cooled down. That the brief flare-up of suspicion had passed. But the whole time I was preparing. That Friday, she mentioned another work dinner. Same vague tone. Same careful glance to see if I'd react. I just smiled and said, "Hope it goes well." She didn't realize I already had the location. Already saw the OpenTable reservation in her email trash folder. Already knew the restaurant and what time she'd be there. And that she wouldn't be alone. After she left that night, I packed a go bag. Nothing dramatic. Just essentials. Laptop, ID, spare clothes, a folder of documents I'd collected. Then I checked into a short-term rental across town under my name. She wouldn't know I was gone. Not yet. I turned off location sharing. Muted all notifications. And I started the process of reclaiming my life. The first official step? Legal consultation. I'd never talked to a lawyer before in my life. But now I found myself sitting across from one in a downtown office, explaining the situation as calmly as if I were reading a weather report. He asked if I had proof. I slid the folder across the table. He flipped through it, nodding slowly. "She doesn't know you've seen any of this?" "No," I said. "She still thinks I'm asking if she wants almond milk on the grocery list." He chuckled, in that way professionals do when they're not sure how else to react. "You're smart to prepare quietly," he said. "It'll make things cleaner." That's what I wanted: clean. Not petty. Not explosive. Just final. Over the weekend, I started notifying the people closest to me. Not about the cheating, not yet. Just that I was taking some time. Some space. Most of them didn't ask questions. A few did. I just said I needed to think. Reevaluate some things. I left her completely alone. No texts. No check-ins. No reactions. And that, more than anything else, was what got her attention. By Monday, she sent a text. Hey, haven't heard from you. Everything okay? I didn't reply. She sent another later that night. You've been kind of distant. Did I do something? Still, I said nothing. Because I wasn't playing the game anymore. No more trying to fix what she'd quietly set on fire. No more pretending. From here on out, everything I did had one goal. Disentangle. Not destroy her. Just escape her. And the strangest part? Felt good. Not revenge. Not vindication. Just relief. For the first time in months, I was making decisions without having to run them through the filter of her lies. And I wasn't done yet. Started small. An Amazon order didn't go through. The same day, her Spotify logged her out while she was driving. I know because she texted me a *T and asked, "Did you change the password?" Hadn't, not yet. But I had removed my card from the shared Prime account 2 nights earlier. I waited a few minutes before replying. Nope, might just be a glitch. She said weird and didn't push. But that was the first ripple. I could tell, even through a screen, that something in her routine had shifted. The next day, her gym membership lapsed. Technically, we were on a joint couples plan. It was auto-paid through my bank, bundled with other wellness perks from work. I canceled it with one email. Again, she texted, "Do you know why the gym app isn't letting me check in?" Could be billing. I'll take a look later. I didn't take a look. I was watching something unravel, something subtle but important. Laura had never worried about how things got done. I handled the bills, the streaming services, the food deliveries, the shared calendar, the car insurance, even the pet food subscriptions. She never had to ask twice. I just made it all work. It gave her room to breathe, to focus, to float. And now that air was thinning. She still didn't know I'd moved out. Still thought I was working late, or staying with a friend for a few days to clear my head. I'd left the house in perfect condition. The only thing missing was me. My keys, my watch, my toothbrush, my presence. On day 4, the real shift began. A payment bounced at one of her favorite boutiques. A place she visited often, usually after errands. The card she used was technically a secondary on my account. She'd asked to add it years ago for convenience. I quietly deactivated it 2 nights earlier. She called this time. Not a text. A full call. I let it ring out. She left a voicemail. "Hey, I don't know what's going on, but my card just got declined and I'm kind of embarrassed. Can you call me back when you get this?" I didn't. She tried again later. Another call. Another voicemail. "Mark, seriously, what's happening? Are we okay? I feel like you're shutting me out and I don't even know why." Still, I said nothing. The silence wasn't a punishment. It was a boundary. And watching her world, the one she'd built with my invisible labor propping it up, start to shift without warning. It felt oddly balanced. Not out of spite, but out of fairness. Because what she'd taken from me hadn't just been trust or love. It was stability. She had made me question my own mind for months. Gaslit me into thinking her secrets were my suspicions. Her distance, my fault. Her silence, my overreaction. And now, for the first time, she was the one feeling the floor give way. By the weekend, she had reached out to 3 of our mutual friends. I know because one of them, Maya, texted me, "Hey, not trying to get in the middle of anything, but Laura said she hasn't heard from you in days and she's really freaked out. Should I be worried?" I just replied, "I'm safe. I'm thinking. That's all." It wasn't a lie. By now, the utilities were being reassigned. I'd removed myself from the internet bill and transferred it under her name. Same with the electric, the streaming accounts, the car insurance. She'd never had to deal with any of that before. I did it quietly. No messages. No instructions. Just left her to handle it. Let her Google the passwords. Let her sit on hold. Let her realize how many systems she relied on without even noticing. On Sunday morning, she finally cracked. I woke up to a string of messages. "Please talk to me. Whatever I did, I'm sorry. I just want to understand. Why are you acting like I don't exist? Is this about Chicago?" That last one. That one stuck with me. She hadn't admitted anything, but she knew that trip was a fracture. And for the first time, I saw panic creeping through her words. Not guilt, not regret, just fear of losing control. I didn't answer. She called again, left a voicemail longer than the others. I listened. Mark, I don't know what's happening between us. I feel like I woke up and everything is gone. You're not here. You're not talking to me. I'm trying, I really am. But I can't fix something if I don't know what's broken. Please, just talk to me. I paused before deleting it. Not out of cruelty. Out of closure. Because by now, the collapse had started fully. The grocery account? Mine. Gone. The pet insurance for our cat? Lapsed. The shared iCloud photo album? Archived. Our Spotify playlists? Split. She messaged me one more time that evening. You're taking things away. One by one. I notice. I'm not stupid. If this is your way of punishing me, I get it. You're angry. But please, just tell me what I did. I'll make it right. But the thing is, she knew what she did. What she didn't expect was the absence of my reaction. The stillness. The quiet. She was waiting for the old version of me. The one who asked, who begged, who filled silence with solutions. But I wasn't that man anymore. I was the one removing the supports. Not to collapse her life. Just to leave it standing without me. So she could finally feel what it was like to live inside the silence she created. A few days after the silence settled in, she tried a new approach. She showed up at the door. I hadn't told her I'd moved out. But somehow, she figured it out. Maybe through a neighbor. Maybe through instinct. Either way, I heard the knock, looked through the peephole, and there she was, Laura, standing with that soft expression she used to wear when we'd fight over something small and she wanted to smooth it over. Hair tied back. No makeup. Hoodie she used to borrow from me. She wasn't there as the version I'd seen at the club. She wasn't glamorous, confident, or distant. She came as the safe Laura, the one I fell in love with. Familiar, soft-spoken, apologetic without saying the word. Hey, she said quietly. Can we talk? I didn't move. She glanced around, eyes searching for some signal that this wasn't over. I just want to understand what's going on. I feel like we've both made mistakes. That word told me everything. Even now, she couldn't admit it. Couldn't say what she'd done out loud. She still thought this was about a disconnect, a rough patch. As if she hadn't chosen someone else. Not just physically but emotionally, for months. I think we both need to own our part, she added. I opened the door only long enough to say one thing. No, I already did. Then I closed it. Whatever version of herself she was trying to resurrect, the safe one, the soft one, it had expired the same night our trust did. After that day, she didn't knock again. But she left traces. A memory shared on social media with a vague caption. A photo from last summer she accidentally posted and deleted. A playlist we made that she changed the title of From Our Songs to Healing. None of it was direct. It was all coded. Like she was trying to be seen without reaching out. Hoping I'd bite. Hoping I'd remember. But I'd already done my remembering. I didn't reply. I didn't like the post. I didn't listen to the songs. I didn't even mention it to anyone. Because this part, the quiet unraveling, wasn't about her anymore. It was about finally choosing peace over confusion. Freedom over cycles. Eventually, her name disappeared from the accounts, the utilities, the lease. There was no final fight. No dramatic confrontation. Just paperwork. Cold signatures. Muted threads. People think closure is a conversation. A last hug. An explanation. It's not. Sometimes, closure is simply no longer needing to explain why you're done. She thought she could always come back. That there'd always be a soft place to land. But that night at the club, the moment she let go of who we were, she miscalculated something important. I wasn't going to chase her anymore. I just stopped catching her.